Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. This is your Window on the World advanced class, and I am your teacher, Doris, and we have several teachers with us today.
Hi, I'm Hazel.
And I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Katrina.
Well, we're so glad to have you with us and all of you listening in because we have to listen well today because we're all ears.
That's right. And when we say that we're all ears, that means we like to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it means that we're ready to listen and we don't need to talk a lot and respond, but we want to hear what the person has to share with us.
So let's listen to the first paragraph.
I'm all ears. The importance of listening. Although listening is the first language skill that human beings develop, and it's how we spend 40% of our time communicating, many of us are not great listeners. In fact, we achieve only 25% of our listening potential, mostly because we're too busy, too distracted, and too focused on what we're going to say next.
That expression, I'm all ears, is one that we often say when somebody says, "Are you ready now to listen?"
I'm all ears.
Are you ready?
I'm all ears.
What about you, Katrina?
I am all ears.
Yeah, we're all ears. Okay, so the importance of listening. Now, that seems like a silly thing to say. Of course I can hear, but maybe we're not thinking and listening.
That's right. It tells us something here. It says that listening is the first language skill that human beings develop. And we know that there's listening, and there's speaking, and there's writing and reading, but listening is the actual first thing that we develop when we're babies.
Yeah, well, you can't even learn a language. Like, if you want to learn Chinese, you can try to read it and so forth, but you've got to listen to it. So listening has to come first, doesn't it?
That's right. And I just want to mention that there's a difference between hearing something and listening. You might actually hear what someone's saying, but you're not necessarily listening, so you really don't actually hear what they're actually saying.
Well, Katrina, it says here that we do spend a lot of time communicating, and do you think people are good listeners or not?
I think that it's hard. Sometimes we're so ready to say what we want to say that we don't even think about what are they saying.
Mm-hmm. That's true. You know, sometimes parents will talk to their kids and now do this and this, and then the kids will don't answer. Are you listening? Mm-hmm. They're kind of listening, but, you know,
no, then we use
attention.
that phrase, what did you say? You know, sometimes we realize that someone just asked us a question. We thought we were listening, but then when we hear that that was a question and they're waiting for a response, it's like, oops, what did you say? Was that important?
Mm-hmm. Or like, have you ever talked to someone and then you ask them a question and then they answer it completely off the top?
They weren't listening.
They weren't listening to the question. And I'm like, did you even hear what I said? Oh, sorry. I was looking at my phone. Sorry. No, I didn't.
Well, it says that we only achieve 25% of our listening potential because we're too distracted. What does it mean to be distracted?
Well, maybe we're interrupted or we're looking at our phone or we're doing something else, trying to send an email. So we're trying to do too many things at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we can also not focus on, we're thinking about what am I going to say instead of what you're saying.
That's right.
While you're talking, I say, well, you go ahead and finish because I'm going to say something else.
Yeah, when somebody's telling a story and you think, oh, I have a better story, and you're thinking about that and not what they're saying.
Yeah, I know that I've been in the situation where I thought someone was going to say, how are you? And so before they even said anything, I'm like, I'm good. Thanks for asking. But in reality, they were going to ask me my name.
Who are you?
Right. Often I'll say hello to someone, how are you? And they'll say, yes. And I'm thinking, that's not a good response.
They weren't really listening to what you said. Huh? That's true.
Well, it's interesting because I'm studying Chinese. And one of the things I usually do when I come to work, because I have about a 45-minute commute, is I listen to Chinese. But I've noticed that it really takes a lot of discipline to actually listen to the Chinese because it's a different language, right? And I find my mind wandering and thinking about other things, and I have to be like, no, I'm going to listen and I'm going to try to learn these words. And it's the same thing when you're
You have
talking
to listen
people.
first, right?
Right. Like when you're talking to people, you have to discipline your mind to listen to what they're
You have to
actually
listen
saying.
a lot before you can understand. That's true. Well, in this part that we're going to talk about today, we're supposed to be able to actually test our knowledge by answering these true and false questions. So today, we're going to ask each other, but I hope all of you that are listening in will answer this too, see what your answer is going to be, because we have to test ourselves and answer these true and false questions. People hate tests, but this will be a fun test, okay? So let's read what we're going to find out about now for the next section.
Test your knowledge by answering true or false to each of the following statements. 1. Listening is the same as hearing. 2. Listening skills develop naturally. 3. People with higher IQs are better listeners. 4. Listening is a passive activity. 5. The person speaking is responsible for making sure his/her message is understood. 6. To be a better listener, sit up straight. 7. Asking questions improves listening effectiveness.
Okay, so we're going to have to see if we can answer these true and false questions. Now, the first question here is we have to be ready. Are you ready?
Definitely.
Are you all ready?
I'm ready for a test.
Ready. Did you write the answer down? Did you get out a pen and a piece of paper?
Well, here's some of the answers. What is the very first question, Hazel?
Listening is the same as hearing. Is that true or false?
What do they say here?
Well, from the article, it seems it is false.
They said it's false. To listen, not the same as hearing. Well, why does it say that? Can you read that?
Well, the article says that although we spend 40% of our time communicating, we only achieve 25% of our listening potential. So we're always communicating, but a lot of times we're not listening while others are communicating to us.
So the answer then is?
The answer is false. That's correct. And, just because you hear a speaker's voice, you might actually hear their voice, but you're not necessarily listening to what they're saying. And what we mentioned before, if someone comes by, a new person just walks into the room, and you think they're going to say, oh, hi, how are you? But instead, they actually just said, good morning. And you're like, oh, I'm fine. You heard their voice, but you weren't listening to what they actually said. I've seen that happen. I've heard that happen time and time again. I've done it before.
Well, but hearing is the body's natural response to sound, it says, while listening involves actively gathering the information to develop a clearer understanding of the message.
So you can hear a person's voice maybe in the background, or maybe you're doing something else and you're distracted, you're too busy or you're not focused, and then suddenly you have to say, what did you say? Because you weren't really listening, even though you were hearing the words.
So listening and hearing, in a sense, is not quite the same. That's what it says.
Right. I mean, that's definitely what the lesson says, because hearing is the body's natural response to sound. So you hear something, but you're not necessarily actively gathering information to have any sort of clear understanding of the message. Like, have you ever been in a classroom setting for an hour, and you can hear the teacher talking, but you're not necessarily listening to what the teacher's actually saying?
Your mind turns off, kind of.
Yeah, maybe you're daydreaming or doodling,
like that,
drawing pictures or something else, or thinking about what you'll do after that class is over. So it's very easy to hear but not
So
really
you
listen.
can ask these questions to your friends sometimes, see what they say.
Yep.
And don't let them see the answers, see?
I feel like one of the worst situations is when you're having a conversation with a friend and the friend is telling you a story and then the friend asks you a question about what they just said and you don't know the answer because you were not listening to what they were saying.
They might be upset with you.
Like, did you even hear what I said? Yeah, I heard. I just wasn't listening. I'm sorry. That happens.
Well, that's true. So, true and false. Okay, now what is the second question they say here? Listening
skills develop naturally.
Now, you would think they would. Is that true or is it false?
Well, the lesson says true, but also false.
How can it be true and also false? How can it be both?
Well, our lesson says while it's true that humans are born with the ability to listen, after all, it's how we learn to speak. Effective listening skills must be carefully developed through effort and practice. And like I was sharing before, I can use the example of like learning Chinese. I could be listening to the Chinese or hearing it, but I have to make an effort to be like, I'm going to learn these words and not just hear the words.
It happens a lot. That's why teachers and friends say, pay attention. Are you listening? Do you hear what I'm saying?
Well, see, this is one of the things that people have this problem when they're learning another language, because if they're translating it all the time and you listen to not the Chinese part, but you hear the English part, or if you're saying it in English and they don't listen to that, they wait for the Chinese translation. They don't learn because they don't listen to that part.
And something I like to tell students, because sometimes they'll ask me, Teacher Rebecca, how can I improve my English? I say, listen to English. Watch English videos without the Chinese subtitles.
Because you'll listen to the Chinese part more.
Well, if there's Chinese subtitles, you don't even listen to the English. You just read the Chinese subtitles. It's the way the brain works. It's really, really interesting.
And so listening skills, in a way, they do develop naturally, but you have to use them. You have to listen. And you have to develop this through effort and practice. You have to say, I'm going to do it.
That's right. And that's the point, effort.
I think that's very difficult sometimes.
Yeah. And I think I really like question 2 because everybody got it right. It's true and false.
Well, yeah, we can true and false. Everybody got it right.
Yeah.
But number 3 says, people with higher IQs, smarter people, are better listeners. Is that true, Christine?
That, in fact, is false.
Are you sure?
Well, just because someone has a high intellect doesn't mean that they are more capable of listening or are better at keeping their attention while someone else is speaking.
Well, show that listening and intelligence are not related. You would think they might be.
And they might be, but not necessarily.
Not really, huh?
So, again, this could be true and false. Maybe it helps, but probably not. It just depends on the personality and many other things.
Right. Well, if you have a high intellect, you should be smart enough to listen. But
Yeah.
But I also think it has something to do with, you being interested and showing respect to the other person, too. Because if you're thinking in terms of, what I want to say next, sometimes people with a higher intellect might be worse listeners because they're thinking that they're smarter and they're thinking about what they want to say next, too.
That's true. That's right. So that's actually false then. So it's not really related to your intelligence. It's just you have to make the effort. I think that's very important. And sometimes it's hard to make an effort. You feel too tired. You don't want to listen, especially to another language.
Definitely. It's very exhausting.
Don't get too tired to listen to us speaking in English right now because the test isn't over yet.
Right. Nope. We're only halfway there.
What is the next question that we're testing our knowledge on?
Number 4 says listening is a passive activity.
Passive activity means that you just do it without even thinking about it. So you don't even have to try. Hazel, is that true or not?
Well, now that is false because effective listening gives the body and mind a rigorous workout. It takes effort to pay attention and to listen carefully. And this article says it causes a faster heart rate, quicker blood circulation, and a rise in the body's temperature. Well, that's news to me, but I'm listening, and if they say so, I'm willing to think about that.
Okay, so that's interesting. You know, to be rigorous means with a lot of effort. When you do something rigorously, it means you put a lot of effort in it, right?
That's right. It's actually a really good word. And oftentimes when I think of that word, I think about exercise, like having a rigorous workout.
Yeah.
I was just going to say I have a little story that my mother had. She used to talk on the phone a lot, but she had a few friends that could talk more than she could. And this one friend would call her often and just talk for hours and hours. And so my mom would say, I see, and then she put the phone down, and about 15 minutes later pick it up and say, yep, and then put the phone back down. And it's like, I can't believe you're doing that. And she says, well, she just talks all the time. I just, So that is a passive listener.
That certainly is, I guess.
Or a
so.
non-listener.
Did the friend ever find out?
I don't think so. Don't tell her she's not listening.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I don't think she ever knew. She just talk.
Oh, boy, that's pretty interesting. But that's true. Sometimes people talk all the time, and are you really listening?
So a good conversation would not be someone that you would have to do that to.
Communication is
They would talk a
communicating.
little bit, and then you would respond, right?
Right. It's a two-way street, not just one.
Right.
Not just listening to somebody all the time. That's true, right? So it's not. Okay, number 5. What does number 5 say? Could you read number 5 for us?
Number 5 says the person speaking is responsible for making sure his or her message is understood.
You would think that the person is speaking, that they should be sure that people understand the message. Yeah, that should be true. Is that true? No, the answer is false. What does it say?
Yeah, you would think it would be true, but our lesson says the speaker and the listener share responsibility for successful communication. That actually surprises me a little bit.
Could be true and false.
I feel like, because what if the
Yeah,
person...
this is true and false, I think.
Yeah.
Because what if the speaker doesn't communicate very well? I mean, the listener has a responsibility to try to understand, but if it's not communicated clearly, it's very difficult
Your
for
mother
the listener.
wasn't understanding very well.
She had enough. But I, as sometimes I teach a class, and if I'm not getting a good response, if I feel people are not listening, I try to do a little bit more. I'm trying to be more active, and I'm trying to talk a little bit more about things that might be important to them. So I think they do share the responsibility in some ways. If you have a boring talk and go on and on and on, your responsibility should be more trying to get the listener to listen.
Yeah, you should take a little bit of the responsibility.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I've always believed that, speaking of teachers, that the teacher hasn't taught until the student has learned. Have you ever heard that saying?
Interactive is important.
Right. And so I think that is very important for the speaker, teacher, whoever is doing the lecturing or giving the speech, should do as a good job at communicating clearly, and then it's the learner's responsibility to understand it.
That's one thing, is that people that talk should realize that they should not talk too long.
Right.
Because our listening span is not so long. People used to go to church and the people would preach for 1 hour long and nobody listened. They go to sleep. But now they try and preach for 20 minutes or something. The first 20 minutes you listen better. But the last part of that hour...
It's hard.
It's kind of hard to listen all that time.
Very difficult.
The person is responsible to keep it interesting, I think. But, that's kind of a hard one. But what is number 6?
Number 6 is to be a better listener, sit up straight. I feel
I
like I
never
need
heard of sitting up straight having to do with listening. What does that got to do with listening? Do you want to tell us that one?
Yeah, so sitting up straight means that, whether you're sitting or standing, if you keep your hands open and your arms at your sides, leaning towards the speaker demonstrates that you are interested in what the speaker is saying and actually helps you pay attention. So
some people are almost too eager, but that's, overexpressing it. But if you're kind of slumping in the chair and they know you're not listening. So what do you think?
Well, I agree. Or if you're standing up and your arms are crossed like this, it kind of sends the message that you're not really interested in what they're saying. If you're sitting in your chair, your shoulders are down, and it kind of sends the message as well that you're not interested.
Especially if your eyes aren't focused on him.
Right, like if your eyes are wandering around looking at other things.
You're not very interested in it, right?
No.
Well, that's true, right? Okay, well, we got one more here today, and then we're going to read through them all because we got time to go through all of these, and they're very simple little things, but they're still quite interesting. And what is the seventh one? It says,
asking questions improves listening effectiveness. So what do you think, true or false?
I think that should be true.
True.
Everybody should. Don't you think that's true?
I definitely think it's true. If
You
asking
have
questions,
to. If everybody asks a question, of course, especially if you're in school, you know that.
Absolutely,
But I
yes.
mean, if your mom and dad's, did you do it? No. But you have to answer something. And what does it say, Hazel? Read
It says
that
it's one of the best ways to improve your listening skills.
Read that part.
Ask more questions. Your question can be as simple as, how are things going, or how's your job been lately? And then maybe when they respond, ask, why is your job not going well, or why are you busy, or, ask a few extra questions.
That's true. Well, now I want you to ask a question to Rebecca and see how she answers and see how well she listens.
I'm ready. I like questions,
Are you ready?
actually.
So, do you ever get cell phone calls where the person just goes on and on and on, and it's hard to keep listening?
Oh, that's a really good question. You know how I typically monitor my phone calls? If I get a phone call from somebody I don't know, I don't answer the call. And I only accept calls from people I know, like my family or friends here in Taiwan. So typically that doesn't happen. Or if they do talk for a long time and I have to go, I'll say, I'm sorry, I need to go.
Like, have you done that with Katrina here? Have you ever said, I've got to go?
Actually, not so much with Katrina, more of our mom. My mom, we can talk on the phone for a long time, and I'm like, oh, Mom, it's been an hour. I gotta go to work. I arrived at work, gotta go, sorry.
Yeah,
But
that's because she's in another country and she wants to talk to you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but for my situation, it is different since I don't see my parents every day.
Right.
True.
Uh-huh. Well, these are kind of interesting things that we need to go over, and I don't know whether we need to read them over or not, because I think we got the idea of them pretty well. But is there anything special that you think we should remember out of all of these questions and answers? Some good words. One thing is, don't get too distracted, and be sure and focus. I think those are two good words. Don't be distracted when people are talking to you. Try to focus. I think that's one good point. Can you think of any other good points?
Well, I really like the point, I guess kind of along what you were saying about listening and how it takes effort. And I think that's actually a really good reminder for me, whether it be having a conversation with someone or whether it be studying another language or whether it be listening to a podcast. No matter what it is, it takes effort.
You know, even when you first meet someone and you ask, what's your name? And like 2 sentences later, you can't remember their name.
Oh, that happens.
It probably
to me
means
sometimes.
that you weren't really listening
Because you
as
think
well as you
might
hoped.
not meet them again. You don't know.
Yeah, and it's just you want to know a lot of people's names, and then it's very easy to forget. So sometimes to maybe focus on that and try
That's
to remember
true. Yeah,
their
have
names
to
would be
remember
great.
that. Right. Well, there's some pretty good vocabulary here, although most of this is not too difficult for us to think of. But the idea is it doesn't matter how intelligent you are, no, how you could say I'm very intelligent, but you still have to be a good listener. Just because you're smart doesn't mean that you're a good listener. So I'm all ears. Do you have anything else to tell me?
Oh, yes. I actually like number 7 as well, about asking questions and how that also improves listening. Because when you ask people questions, it shows that you're interested in them. But don't just ask a question and then pretend you're listening and then think about other things.
I was just looking at this vocabulary here, and I think that's great. And the vocabulary word "be all ears," and the definition is to be waiting eagerly to hear about something, and that adjective "eagerly" or adverb is just so exciting. Like, I'm so excited to hear what you're going to say, and I think that's so cool.
To have that kind of attitude, you can show that, when somebody's talking, that you are interested to hear what they're saying. And they can tell kind of a body language with that, too, whether you're sitting up straight or not, but you're looking at them. And the fact is that when people talk, you have to listen. So you should be all ears and listen. And then you can communicate, because communication is really between two people. Communication is connecting. And in order to connect, we have to listen to what people say.
I just thought sometimes I'm with people and I don't even want to say something because they're looking at their phones. It's like when I'm at a meal and everybody's looking at their phones, it's like, I guess no one wants to chat. Or no one's listening, So maybe there's a time when you can put your cell phones down and just start a conversation and actually listen and converse and
your
enjoy
cell phone
each
might
other.
ring while you're talking.
Yeah.
Well, kind of along the same lines, I know for me, it's really difficult to want to start a conversation when you see everyone looking at their phones. Or if you ask a question and then they answer the question, but they're like still looking at their phones as
Some
they're...
people have to look at their phone to find the answer.
Right. That's true. That's true. So I definitely want to encourage you all, take a break from your cell phone sometime. Take time and actually build relationships with people. Communicate face to face. Look at people in the eye. And you don't need your cell phone all the time.
I'm all ears. That was good.
Yeah, that's good.
What did you say? That's what we talked about the last couple of days. So that's part of our communication, and we hope that we can communicate with you through the radio. We're sorry we can't see you, but we hope you're all ears and you're listening. And be sure and listen in every day for the conversations that we have, because that will help improve your language, and also you will learn a lot of new things. We always do when we study advanced. So thanks for being with us, and we're glad you could be here today. And we'll see you next time for another lesson. So have a good month next coming up.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.